Over the last 7 years, I have tried every kind of marketing you can possibly imagine for my business. And I have determined over that time that direct mail has been by far the most profitable marketing channel I have ever tried. And I've spent over $1 million just testing it out, figuring out what works and figuring out what doesn't. And through that time, I've been able to generate over 100 deals per year in my business using direct mail. And now I've created a very small but very powerful mini course on how I utilize direct mail in my business. It explains everything I do from A to Z, and I've made this available to you absolutely free. That's right, no charge, no obligations. Just go to my website, MikeSimmons.com/winning direct mail. MikeSimmons.com/winning direct mail to find out how you can implement my system in your business and start generating more leads through direct mail. Go check it out. It's absolutely free. I can't wait for you to try it.
Yeah, so it's funny. I didn't actually sell a property until 2020 or 2021. So very recently. I was a buy and hold investor through and through.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Just Start Real Estate Podcast. If you're serious about your real estate investing business and need real answers, you are in the right place. And now, your host, Mike Simmons.
All right, thank you for joining me on Just Start Real Estate. I appreciate you being here. I'm happy to have you here, and I'm happy to be here with you. I have a fun, fantastic interview. I am talking to Michael Albaum, and Michael is living a nomadic lifestyle. He's living in a van. He's traveling the country. He's running a podcast. He works for Roofstock. He's an investor. He's buying multifamily. He's buying short-term rentals in different areas of the country. Just really, really dynamic, fun, interesting real estate investor. And he's doing it in a way that I just find fascinating. I could not live in a van and travel the country. I'm not built like that. I need my house. I need my things. I need my bathroom and all that stuff. But he's doing it. He had this van like designed and created so that they could travel. Him and his wife could travel the country and work remotely. Just so cool. It's some of his adventures and the things he talks about and the way he's doing his business is just really inspirational. But the number one thing I took away from this interview was that he's living life on his terms. He's doing what he wants to do, how he wants to do it. And I love that message. So I'm excited and enthusiastic, if you can't tell, to bring you my interview with Michael Albaum. So without any further delay, I give you Michael Albaum. All right, Michael, thank you for agreeing to be on Just Start Real Estate, and thank you for being a guest. I appreciate your time, man.
My pleasure, Mike. Thanks so much for having me on. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, same. I am too. This is gonna be a fun interview. I always do background, not checks. That sounds like I'm running credit. We do background searches. Exactly. Like I noticed you have some criminal record. No, but I try to become educated about the person I'm talking to. I mean, it's fine to discover things on the interview, but I really don't like when I listen to interviews and I can tell clearly the host doesn't have a clue who they're talking to, and so I try not to do that. And so in doing so, I learned some cool things about your past and stuff that you're up to that is going to be a lot of fun to dig in and kind of unique and interesting for the audience. So I'm excited to do that. And they've heard a little bit about you, your bio that they just heard just now. But can you give the folks, just in your own words, a little bit better, in your own words, background of who you are and how you arrived where you are in your life right now? Because you have done some neat stuff. And so how did this all unfold? Why are you not working a cubicle job? Why?
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. So I'm just a regular guy, regular Joe Schmo. Grew up in Southern California, did the things that everyone, I'm sure a lot of your audience was told to do: go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and then you'll be kind of set up for life. So did all that, was working a Bay Area engineering role that I really liked, but quickly realized this isn't going to get me where I want to go fast enough. So got my hands on Rich Dad Poor Dad, which again, I'm sure a ton of your listeners have checked out and got inspired by.
If there was some sort of a residual check that was owed to Robert Kiyosaki for people who read that book and became successful, he's already maybe a billionaire, but he'd be a trillionaire, like a gazillionaire. Like, I can't tell you the amount of people that have told me that, but that's, yeah.
I know. I think one of the things is it's such a great equalizer in that it's an easy to read book. It's not complicated financial. It's not complicated, from a strategy perspective. Just, hey, this is a story. And the the morals and the what you're going to get out of it is so easily extractable and so easily relatable. So that book just kind of slapped me upside the head, and I realized I didn't know as much as I thought I knew about money, and it kind of changed the way that I thought about money.
Yeah.
So being an engineer, real estate investing really resonated with me just from a conceptual standpoint. I could wrap my head around it because I lived in a house. I had seen houses. I knew that people did this. I knew I wasn't the first one having to do it. So I played around with some spreadsheets. I got self-educated for about 2 years. Bigger Pockets wasn't around. Podcasts weren't really in my life at that point. So I was trying to piece it all together for myself, and eventually spent 2 years getting self-educated, went and bought my first property. And when that first rent check showed up, I'm like, ding, I'm a genius.
Yeah.
I've just solved the Rubik's Cube. Lo and behold, right? Tons of people have before me, but I just realized, okay, this is really powerful.
Yeah.
And so I said, if I can do this once per year for 10 years, in 10 years, I'll have 10 properties. And that sounded like a good number. And so was just continuing to do that. And I was working hard, trying to earn more, live well below my means. I was always living with roommates. I never lived alone, in cheap apartments, cheap houses. And so I was just funneling all of my money into real estate. And I definitely had like a cheat code growth hack, if you will, and that my territory for work was the Northwest US. So I was traveling all over the place, and work was paying for a lot of my travel and a lot of my living expenses.
Yep.
So every market that I was in for work, I would just look and see what the real estate market was, because now I'm a self-proclaimed real estate investor.
Yeah. That's smart.
Ended up buying properties all over the place. And I'm again like, ding, light bulb moment. I'm a genius. I'm so smart. If anything happens in market A, I'm in B through E and vice versa.
Yeah.
But I hit this inflection point, Mike, and it just became too overwhelming. Chasing down 6 different property managers for 6 different properties.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Real pain in the butt. And so I think there's a point where you can get too diversified. And that's, I think, where I ended up. And so a friend of mine gave me some advice. He says, look, go target 1 or 2 markets, get laser focused, watch what happens. It'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
And I said, that's kind of counterintuitive to everything I thought I knew about investing, but I'll give it a go. And that's what I've been doing for the last 4, 5, 6 years. And it's really been amazing.
Yeah, the diversification in different markets, that was exactly what I thought. You go to all these different markets, you're looking at the real estate, you're buying properties. Like you lose some of that economy of scale, right? You lose some of that efficiency by being so spread out. So you said Bigger Pockets wasn't around, podcasting really wasn't a thing for you. What year are we talking when you sort of got Rich Dad Poor Dad and the light bulb went on and you started educating yourself? What years are we talking?
2012.
Okay.
So just after the recession, and people were like, oh, real estate's the worst thing ever. Don't touch it. 10-foot pole kind of a thing.
I know. It's so funny. It's like, you know what? When people say that, this is a good lesson for people listening now, because, you know, depending on who you talk to, we're about to go through something, or we're heading into it, or we're in it right now, however you look at it. But the fact of the matter is, when the media says don't do something, there's a really good chance you might want to look at doing it.
Because, you should go do it.
You know, I remember I started my real estate career in 2008. That was when I bought my first house. And the media and everybody was yelling, screaming, get away, right? Like you said, run, real estate bad. Like just literally real estate bad. No details needed. Just it's bad, right?
Right.
And I was going into it anyway, and I was sort of like clueless about what I was doing, and I didn't really know how good of a deal it was. But I know this: when the media tells me to stop buying real estate again, I will 100% be going in like, you know, hardcore, because it was a great time to get in. So that was a great time to get in, although you bought all over the place and you were diversified. When did you start selling off the properties that were in all these different states? Like, what year was it where you started being a little more laser focused?
Yeah. So it's funny. I didn't actually sell a property until 2020 or 2021. So very recently. I was a buy and hold investor through and through.
Yeah.
And so I was refinancing properties all that while to gain access to equity and cash to be able to continue growing and doing more deals. But I didn't sell anything. I thought I would never sell, to be honest, Mike.
Yeah.
And so instead of like chasing all these property managers, I just kind of sat them down and said, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm not focusing on this anymore. This isn't a growth market for me. So like, just take it and run. And by that time, we'd been working together for 6, 7, 8 years. Yeah. So I already had that good working relationship. So that was a pretty easy handoff, if you will.
Got it.
But I found an opportunity that I wanted to buy and didn't have any access to cash. So I sold, again, those first properties in 2020 and just moved some of the money over.
Well, if you bought them in the 12 to 24 2014 range, 2015, and just sold them in 2021. That's awesome. Congratulations, because you must have totally killed it. So
yeah, they worked out really nicely.
Yeah, that's awesome. So just out of curiosity, how did you get your hands on Rich Dad Poor Dad? Was it just dumb luck? Did somebody give it to you? Did you seek it out? Like, how did you get your hands on it?
Yeah, the story I like to tell myself is I went and sought it out, but I'm pretty sure my dad gave it to me. He's like, "Yeah, I think you should read this."
That's awesome. It's funny. Years ago, like 10 years ago, I told my daughter, who was then like 12 or 13, I paid her to read it. Like I said, I'm going to give you this assignment. I'm going to pay you $100, but you have to read this, and I'm going to give you quizzes, and you have to read a book report. I want to know you read it and know you understood it, but I'm going to pay you to do that. And she now she's flipping houses, and she doesn't do it full time because she loves her career. She's a social worker and she loves that. It's her passion, but she's flipped houses. She's buying short-term rentals. Like, it seeped in. And she was the least capitalist person you'll ever want to meet growing up. And even still, right? She's not like, I need to be a millionaire, but she's an entrepreneur. And it just, how much of that book like took root, deep inside of her and now is blooming. She's the only one in my family who does that. And she's the only one we made read it. So interesting.
I know.
Interesting. Kind of an experiment I did on my kid, but it worked. It was kind of cool.
It worked.
Yeah, it was good.
And what's the worst that could happen is like they don't like it and they ended up reading a book. Okay, so you're out $100.
And the thing is that she was totally against reading it. Like, she had no interest in like business and making like money. To her at that age was like, I don't even care. Who cares about money when you're 12? You don't care because I make it and you benefit. But she didn't care about it. She wasn't into it. And it sort of like took hold in her. So everybody out there listening, have your kids read it. But however you have to do it, have them read it, and let's just see what happens when they're older. So,
love it.
So talk to me about one of the cool things that I found out about you when I was researching and kind of figuring out what we could talk about today is that you have this, or had, I don't know if you're still doing, I think maybe a pandemic sidelined you a bit, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you had this sort of nomadic experience where you were mobile, living in some sort of van or some sort of a mobile thing, and investing and sort of living that life, which is, I'll be honest, it's completely against my nature to do that. I'm a planner. Like, when someone says, "Hey, let's go camping tomorrow," my brain goes, whoa. We didn't plan any of this. Like, what's going on? I need more information, right? And so I'm obviously not the kind of guy who would typically do that, but it interests me. How did that come about, and how did that work? Yeah,
totally. So rewinding the clock back a little bit to 2018. So my father passed away. Semi-expectedly. He was sick for a while with cancer.
Okay.
And so I asked my job if I could go totally remote and work from home, moved back home with my mom. And at then the time, my girlfriend, now wife. And so we were just kind of being able to help support mom and be there for her. So they said, okay to that. So that was 3 or 4 months. And then I came back to work. I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. And so I said, hey, look, I need 6 months to just go and be and do and just totally unplug and kind of do a mental reset. And they said, I'm sorry, we can't do that. And I said, well, then I'm sorry, I can't work here anymore. So that's when I kind of quit the 9-to-5 world. And that was 2019.
Okay.
So my wife and I said, let's just go travel for a year. Let's go and live in countries and explore countries that are cheaper than here because we've got this real estate backing us up. My wife had a total remote job at the time anyhow. So we were just like, this is perfect. This is the opportune time to do that.
Yeah.
So we went and did that. And we're just all over the place, having a ball, having an amazing experience. I was picking up some remote freelance work as well. Because about that time I had 2 fires in a property that I was redeveloping. And I was like, I need some more money to finish this thing. So picked up some side work, and it was just this amazing experience. And then we woke up in Lisbon, Portugal one day in April to friends and family texting, calling, emailing, get home now, the borders are closing. So we were like, uh-oh. So we came back to the States, very eerie flight, very eerie experience through customs. There was like no one on the road at San Francisco airport, which was just a super weird thing. So then we were living on the central coast of California during the pandemic. And my wife says to me, she's like, I'm not quite done traveling. I want to go, what if we did this whole van thing? And I'm like you, Mike, I'm a total planner. I'm an engineer at heart through and through. Like, I want to know all the details, the steps, like how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
And she's like, let's do this. And I was like, we can't. Like, and she goes, why? And I didn't really have a good answer. So she really pushed us and encouraged us to do that. So we found a van. We had a buddy that used to work for a van conversion company. He built it out. We did all the design work alongside him and said, this is what we want. This is how we want to lay out and look and stuff. So he built it. And then we moved into a van full time for the better part of 8 months and rented out our house that we were living at. And we're just all over the place.
All right. Couple of questions. Number one, you're right. I didn't think about the fact you're an engineer. That should have been my first question. How does an engineer go live in a van? But thank God for wives that balance us out, right? Like nobody needs to be that extreme in one direction. You need someone who can pull you out of your comfort zone a little bit. So kudos to her. But here's a practical question. Where do you go to the bathroom? Do you just like stop at like restaurants and fast food restaurants? Is that where you go to the bathroom and take a shower for that matter?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So we thought about that during the design phase because we were middle of the pandemic and we had driven home from Central California to visit my mom in Southern California several times and all the restrooms were closed.
Yes.
All of the physical buildings were closed.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, we have to account for this. So we had a shower built in, full-size shower built inside the van. We got a tankless hot water heater. We bought what's called a cassette toilet. So it's basically whatever you go to the bathroom in, it'll seal it up and then bring you a fresh bag. And then for liquid waste, we had just basically a tube and a funnel, kind of medical grade that we would dump, in the side of the road, wherever in empty fields whenever we needed to.
All right. How do you stand up in a shower in a van? You could stand up in this van? Totally stand up?
Yeah, it's 6 feet. It's 6 foot clear height from floor to ceiling. And I'm not a very tall person. I don't know if you can tell from the video recording, but like I'm 5'8", my wife's 5'5". So we were like, this is awesome. Like we've been in hotels that we have to kind of scrunch down to use the shower. But no, it was awesome.
That's awesome. Wow. So let's just, I could ask 100 questions about just this lifestyle, but I don't want to lose the listeners too badly. What was your biggest challenge that you didn't foresee as it relates to maintaining your business? Were there any stumbling blocks or challenges that you were like, we didn't really consider this. We have to problem solve here?
To be honest, no.
Okay.
I think the most difficult thing was, so in 2019 is when I got connected with Roofstock and started doing consulting and coaching work for them. And 2021 went full time with them and we were still in the van at the time. And so I think the hardest thing was I was still running podcasts. We have a podcast called The Remote Real Estate Investor. So I was interviewing people from the road, wherever I was. And so we accounted for that and we bought a thing called a WeBoost, which basically boosts cell signal. And then we had a hotspot, which converts cell signal into Wi-Fi. And so that's what I was using to podcast. But as you know, I mean, the data usage on that is pretty high. And so if we were anywhere that didn't have a great connection or didn't have good cell coverage and the WeBoost wasn't working that well, that was kind of challenging. So I was definitely in some pickles where I was like, I guess we can't do this podcast today. So that was the hardest thing. But other than that, not really. Because I had done it for the last year internationally.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Did you tell Roofstock when you started working with them that you were living in a van? Did they know this?
Yes. Oh, okay. So when I started doing like consulting with them, I was all over the world, kind of in other countries. And so that was one of my stipulations was like, hey, if I'm coming on board to do this totally full-time, dedicate myself to you all, this isn't changing. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, no, we get it. Like you can clearly do this. So like, whatever, that's awesome.
That's cool. How did that come about? Why did you start working for them? How'd that even happen?
Yeah. So my wife, so when my dad passed away, we moved home like I was sharing with you. And so my wife was working in an in-office job that she wasn't able to do remote. So she said, hey, I got to quit. And so she went through this platform called Upwork, which is just a freelance website. Some people know it, maybe others don't. And she picked up a project gig there. And that's actually how I got connected with Roofstock they needed someone to help make their education program, make content and PowerPoints. And I was like, okay, like that sounds kind of interesting. That's not really what I'm doing now. I was still working as an engineer, but I said, whatever, I'll do whatever because it's remote and it brings me an income. So I said, this is great. And so one thing kind of led to another and they said, oh, this is great content. Like we need coaches as part of this program. Do you want to be the coach? I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds cool. I mean, I talk about real estate all the time anyhow, may as well get paid for it.
Yeah. Nice. So they hired you through through Upwork. Is that how they found you?
Yeah. That's how we got connected. Was
originally they use Upwork to hire folks?
So it was just supposed to be a contract gig. They needed someone to do this particular thing.
I see.
And so I did the thing and they said, hey, we kind of like you. If you like us, do you want to, keep dating, so to speak? And I said, yeah, sure. Sounds great. Let's see how this evolves.
So what do you do for them now exactly? Are you're just creating content? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so now I'm the program manager for the Roofstock Academy, which is the education program that I helped create and now we run. And so it's got videos, content, lectures, one-on-one coaching. And so I serve as the head coach as well for that program, as well as make content, YouTube, podcast.
Yeah. So your goal was originally to get back way back when, right? Back 2012 or whenever you started, to get 10 properties. That sounded like a good number to you. What does your business look like now, and what is the current goal?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So as I was just evolving throughout my investing career, I went out of state and got involved in multifamily fairly quickly. I bought 2 single families in California and I was like, screw this, when I was outside traveling for work. I saw how much further the dollar could go. So started buying like 5 family, 8 families, 10 families. And so I was in growth mode for a long time. And I was like, I want the biggest portfolio possible. Like screw 10, I want 100, because again, 100 sounded good. And all these big players in the space were talking about these massive property portfolios. Yep. And it just, again, it got unwieldy. It got top heavy. It got to a point where I said, this isn't me. I'm trying to hit this number because someone else said that that's a good number to hit. Yeah. And so I started trying to do more with less. And so I said, let's scale back on the acquisitions. Let's scale back on the value add projects and just look to do more with less. And so now I'm at 61 units. I've sold off at the peak. I was at 75. I sold off some of those, just trimmed the fat, tried to get leaner, tried to get easier managing properties. Yeah. And I said, I kind of had a life epiphany that my wife and I were chatting about. And we said, if this doesn't feel easy, if this takes up more mental bandwidth, let's not do it. Even though it might be a great deal, even though it might make total sense on paper, like if it takes us away from the things that we want to be doing, which are spending time with each other and enjoying life, that's pulling us in the wrong direction. Yeah. Which I did for so many years at the beginning. So I said, having learned from that, let's do things differently going forward. So we're trimming down the portfolio. We're buying short-term rentals, doing things that are just a little bit easier to manage. And that's kind of where we are today. And going forward, looking to continue growing the single family short-term rental portfolio and just doing things that feel easy.
Okay. So one thing you said that's I think is really important for people to hear, because I experienced this personally, just like you, and because I do coach people, I've watched this happen to a lot of people, where you get involved and you start surrounding yourself with investors and their goals become your goals. And before you know it, you're on this hard charging path toward a goal that you never really wanted, but you thought you wanted because somebody else wanted it and they made it sound really attractive that they wanted it. I did the exact same thing. I started creating this rocket ship that was going Mach 4 to the moon. And I was like, good Lord, this isn't fun at all, right? And at a point, it became top heavy for me too, where we were like spending almost what we were making. And it's like, what are we doing, you know? And so we made some changes too, and like the net dramatically improved, and it was just such a better thing. But you mentioned, I don't want to like pick on something you said, but it sounded counterintuitive. You said you wanted to have rentals that were less work. And then you said short-term rentals, which I think like common thought is a long-term rental is less work. Short-term rentals are more active and more inherently more work because it's a hospitality business and you have people coming and going every half a dozen days or more, right? So how is that less work for you to do short-term versus long-term, for example?
Yeah, it's a super good question, and it is totally counterintuitive. And I think the magic bullet here, the silver bullet in long-term or short-term is the management. And so I don't manage 99% of my portfolio of the short-term rental stuff.
Love it.
I do manage, we have a house hack here where I'm currently living. So we manage the upstairs unit that we rent out. And then we manage our old primary that we used to live out on the Central Coast because it's easy, because we know it. We have our network there. Yeah. But from a remote perspective, I've handed everything off to property managers. And so that just goes to further the point of like, you have to run your numbers. You have to be super diligent and understanding, because there's this big overhead. Like management's a financial drag. Yeah. There's no question about it, but I couldn't make the investment without them.
True. Yeah. I love that. And people ask me, I just got asked this question the other day. At what point, they were talking about long-term rentals, but they said, at what point does it make sense to have a management company? And I said, for me, the first rental, like I don't want to manage these, right? And I get it. It's a cost, but that's an expense that I calculate in. Like, vacancies and maintenance and anything else, right? I just calculate that in because I don't want to deal with the calls or the headaches or the hassles. So for me, number one, they had like this person asking me had like 15 rentals, and they're like, "At what point should I have a management company?" I'm like, "Why don't you have one already?" Yeah, yesterday, right? I love that. So how are the short-term rentals? Are the short-term rentals all over the place? Like you mentioned, focus back, maybe a while back, you were focusing on just a couple areas. Are you now opening up the short-term rental market all over, or are you still focusing in just one or two locations?
No, I tried to learn from my past mistakes and not make the same mistakes again. So I'm focused exclusively out in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, which if anyone has heard about short-term rentals, they've probably heard of the Smoky Mountains.
Yep.
So it's a super hot market. But that experience has been really wonderful. It's been really great working with the same property manager for all the properties out there. It makes it so easy. It's very, very much plug and play, which is what I experienced on the long-term side. So I said, okay, let's apply the same thinking to the short-term space. Totally.
So I have heard of the Smoky Mountains as it relates to short-term rentals. There's a few people that talk about it, pretty publicly. Is there still a decent opportunity there, or is it just saturated and is it like cutthroat, very hard to find deals, or is it like a reasonable place for people to go and try to build short-term rentals?
Yes. So I just bought a deal off the MLS back in May that we closed on. So people are saying, "Oh, you have to find off market." Like, yeah, that's probably helpful, but you don't have to. Yeah. And we just did it. So I was chatting with my property manager the other day, and he was saying that over the last, I think 12 months, he said, and don't quote me on this, but something like 3,700 new short-term rentals have come online. Wow. And so there's just a lot of supply from the existing short-term rental space side of things, but there's also a ton new getting built. Yeah. So, if we're forecasting out, we've got new short-term rentals that weren't previously short-term rentals, and we've got new inventory being built. Yeah. That kind of sounds like a recipe for oversupply. Yeah. And so I would be thinking about, okay, well, what are you going to do that's going to set yourself apart so that the 14 million people that do happen to go visit the Smoky Mountains every year are going to select your property over someone else's? Got it. The other thing, though, that I think personally, Mike, is just that people are changing the way in which they travel. And I think the Smoky Mountains has always been a very heavy vacation market, a drive-to vacation market. Yep. It doesn't cost a lot of money for so much of the country to physically get there. Yep. And so if people aren't comfortable with international travel or can't afford or don't want to spend the money on international travel, they're still going to go take the family somewhere to vacation. Yeah. And so if it's a drive-to market, I'm still a very much big believer in those really heavy vacation markets. They're going to continue to do well in the future. Yeah. Are there other than the Smoky Mountains, are there any other areas that you're looking at or considering as a short-term rental person who wants to, build a portfolio, or are you just focusing only there? It's all you care about? We're personally only focused there. We investigated and looked at Joshua Tree in Southern California a while back. Again, a very heavy vacation market. It has been blowing up over the last couple of years. Yep. But being that it's so far in Southern California, you could call it a quote unquote remote location. Yeah. It doesn't have the drivability for so much of the country that a lot of these other vacation markets do. And so I'm not as bullish on that market in particular, but if we found something that was great, that was amazing, that maybe we would go use as well, I could probably be talked into it. But as far as serious consideration, it's just the Smokies for me right now. Okay. So let's talk about this whole escaping the 9-to-5. You kind of did it. It sounds like, for an engineer, by the way, kudos. It sounds like it was a bit of a impromptu decision. I'm not an engineer, and I spent a little bit more time. My wife is my balancing. I talked about, thank God for spouses who balance you out. Yes. I'm a hair on fire. I'll risk all the money every single time I play a game. I don't care. Money risk doesn't scare me. My wife is quite the opposite. So I actually had to plot my escape from jail very carefully, scratch it out on a wall every day. And so I saved a year's salary in cash, put it in the bank, and said, this is the insurance policy. If things go off the rails with my, quitting my job, we've got this money and we have time, right? How do you suggest, not just how you did it, I know how you did it, but how do you suggest to people that they go about building this side hustle into something that can eventually help them escape? Yeah, I think it's super important to plan it out. And I'm again, very similar to you. I planned it out and I said, okay, this is how much I'm making from real estate. This is how much I was making from my job. But I think that one of the biggest factors for us is that we were outside the US. when we decided to do this, or when we were going outside the US. And so I said, okay, well, our expenses are X today, but tomorrow when we land in Costa Rica, they're going to be Y. Yeah. And so that made it a little bit easier. And so if you can earn income in dollars and then spend your expenses in a currency that's valued at less than dollars, or a country that's cheaper than the US, that adds an additional layer of protection there. And I said, okay, this is going to be okay. And just like truth be told, Mike, I was willing to prioritize my mental health and well-being above and beyond the financial security that I wanted. Yeah. And so at that time in my life, I was like, screw it, I'm out. Like, I can't do this anymore. And they said like, oh, we'd love to have you back anytime. You're more than welcome. So I definitely did have my plan B. The bridge wasn't totally burned on the way out. And I said, I could always go get another job. Like, what I was doing was in really high demand. It still is in high demand. So it's not like it's so niche that I couldn't get a job doing that.
Gotcha.
So I said, look, if everything goes sideways, if this just all comes crashing down, this doesn't pan out the way we thought it did, I could just, again, go get another job. And then because I'm a neurotic planner, I said, well, just in case, let me continue doing this Upwork stuff. Yeah. So I was doing some supplemental stuff, and I said, okay, very much on the back burner. If things went totally sideways, could I pick up more hours doing remote work? Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of an easy way for people to ease into it, is like, have something going on the side. And then if you are really scared like me, have something that you could grab onto super quickly if need be.
Yeah. Super smart. All right. One last thing I want to talk about is you mentioned it, and I didn't really dig in, but I want to dig in just a little bit. You're doing some multifamily stuff, some commercial stuff. Mm-hmm. And what I'm seeing here in my notes is you're not buying 200 unit buildings, right? You're building you're buying the smaller multifamily stuff. Yeah. And like, I've interviewed a lot of people who do multifamily, and a lot of what I hear, a lot of what people's opinions are, is like that 5 to 20 units is sort of no man's land. Like, it's not big enough for some certain, people want to have management in house and all. Like, they want to do certain things. You can't do it unless you're over 50 units or whatever. So a lot of times this 5 to 25 unit multifamily stuff gets overlooked by some people. Think it's too big, I only do single. And the people who do multi go, that's too small, it's not worth my time. And so it's like an undervalued, but underexposed, or people just aren't really looking for that. Why did you choose that range?
Yeah. If anyone's watching the video, I've been like nodding my head voraciously this whole time, because that's exactly it. And truth be told, I didn't know that when I first got involved. It was literally, I went into a new market. I was in Northern Kentucky, and I found this 8 unit, and I was like, holy crap, this is like the same price as a single family in Southern California, in the market that I'm used to investing in. So it just like blew my mind. And so I said, let me learn a little bit about this market. Let me see what there is to see. And so I was working with an agent at the time who was showing me other properties. And it was just like, it was only because it was in my price point, and the price to rent ratio made sense. Okay. And so I used to study Japanese jiu-jitsu, and we talk about like a pickle jar zone, like where you're like kind of in your power zone, you feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. That's where I was with this. It would push me a little bit outside my comfort zone in terms of unit count, but from a price point, I could very much get my head around it. Yep. So I said, let me just do more of this. And exactly to your point, the folks that were single family up to 2s, 3s, 4s, that was too big for them. Yeah. And the folks that are institutional, or that are, diehard multifamily, big time syndicators, whatever, it was too small for them. And my buddy who told me to go get laser focused, when I told him what I was doing, he's like, Michael, like, it's genius. It's like, it's so clever what you're doing. And again, I didn't even realize I was doing it. It was just because it happened to work. Like, the numbers worked out, and I was like, okay. And so it wasn't until I had purchased a couple of these deals that I was like, kind of looking around, and I'm like, there's no one else like bidding on these properties. Like, there's no competition. Like, what's going on? Like, why am I the knucklehead? I'm the sucker, right? I must be the sucker if no one else is wanting to touch this stuff. Yeah. And a big part of that was that there was a very heavy value add component to a lot of these properties. And so they were junky, they were beat up. And I said, I can do this. And I definitely got over my skis quite a bit. And I took on 4 at the same time. And that was a whole nother story we could chat about. But again, just the landscape from a high level, these properties, these types of assets it's just like you said, in no man's land. No one wanted to deal with them. So I know, generally speaking, especially talking to like investors that are doing the 50, 100, 200, 500 units, what are the value adds though in like an 8 unit? Like, what are the typical, you go in and you can almost guarantee you're going to do bop. Like, what are the things that you typically do on an 8 unit, for example? Yeah. So everything that we were doing was physical renovations. So new flooring, new cabinets, new paint, new fixtures. And some of these were in worse shape than others. Like I did a 4-family that needed all new plumbing and electrical, which was not part of the bid when I purchased the building. Yeah. So you get the walls off and you're like, this isn't going to work. So
you're basically just renovating like you would a single family. It just there happens to be 8 of them. You're not like adding laundry facilities or doing anything like that necessarily.
Well, yes, that as well, but that isn't necessarily like these units, these buildings are pretty different from one another. So if we had like if we had eight families like all in a row and they were all brick and you could kind of figure out, okay, piecemeal it. Okay, I'm doing the same thing in all these units. Yeah. That would be a really great approach. But again, being so green and naive, I was like, I don't know, like whatever. So the physical renovations is great. RUBS, which is an acronym for Ratio Utility Billing System, is a really great one because a lot of these buildings in this market I was in were built as single families and then only afterwards converted to multifamily.
Gotcha.
And with a single family, you have one master meter for the utilities. So one electrical meter, one water meter, one gas meter. And so you're paying for the utilities. And what I've often found, which I'm sure many of your listeners would agree to, that if someone isn't paying for something, they're not really paying attention to how much they use.
Yep.
So heaters on in the winter and the front door and windows are open.
Yeah.
So going and putting the utilities back on the tenants can be a really great value add as well.
Gotcha.
And then looking at what the market rents were, that I think was one of the most impactful things. I bought a property, the rents were at $450 roughly per unit on a 5-family. We came in, we gave everyone was month to month. We gave them 30 days notice. Rents went up to $650 per month. We had, I think, 2 or 3 tenants stay and then 2 or 3 leave. And so immediately added $600 a month in revenue overnight.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you look at that on a cap rate basis, that's super impactful. And so looking for inefficiencies where I think so many people, when they're starting investing, because I know I was right there, I bought turnkey. I was scared of any kind of value add, didn't even know what the term meant or that it existed.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got a little bit more sophisticated in my investing that I was like, oh, the fact that they're paying $450 a month in rent means that there's an opportunity. Not that that's a bad thing to run away from. Yep. And so I think when you put on a bit of a different hat, different lens, you can start to see these things as pros as opposed to cons.
What are you more focused or excited about now, short term or some of these multifamily things? Are you still doing the multifamily, the small multifamily, or okay?
Yeah. So I still do multifamily. The last 3 purchases have all been in the short-term space.
Okay.
And then with a new primary as well, which like I mentioned, we're house hacking. So short-terming that as well.
Yep.
So all of the multifamily, I'm just stabilizing it right now, purchased over the last several years. I have this massive redevelopment project that's just been like killing me inside for the last couple of years. Like I mentioned, I had 2 fires in the course of construction and an insurance battle. And I mean, just a real headache. So that's been taking up most of my mental bandwidth. So hence the reason for kind of the reshifting and saying, let's only do the easy stuff.
Got it. So you, being involved with Roofstock, like you are as an educator, what are your general, we don't have to get real specific, and I know nobody has a crystal ball, so it doesn't really matter to get super specific, but what are your general feelings on the market and what's happening and what it means for investors like us?
Yeah. So I am a big believer that the best time to buy real estate was 10 years ago. The next best time is today.
Yeah, I love it.
And you I think said it so nicely, Mike, when the media starts telling you run away, that's when we have to start running towards.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are nervous. A lot of people are scared. A lot of people are sitting on the sidelines. And so what I'm hearing from Roofstock works with local agents in all the markets that we operate in. And what I'm hearing from them is that we're no longer seeing 10, 20, 50 offers on properties and people aren't waiting for their highest and best. We're seeing 1, 2, 3 offers on each property. And so oftentimes sellers are just taking the first one, because they don't know if a better one is coming. So they're grabbing they're striking while the iron is hot. And so if we kind of reposition this and understand, well, okay, maybe we can start getting a little bit more aggressive with our offers because sellers aren't getting as many as they were in the past.
Yep.
And interest rates are going up. Yeah. And they kind of jumped up overnight. But if you look back to pre-pandemic levels and compare them against where we are today, they're a little bit higher, but they're not like, it's not outrageous.
No.
And so I think, and I'm still guilty of it too, we have very short-term memory. We can only remember what happened 30 days ago, a month ago, 2 months ago, what have you. And so if the numbers make sense, I wouldn't let the interest rate scare you just because of the fact that it's larger than it was 2 months ago or a year ago.
Right.
And also, like, if you're buying your first property or second property, and depending on what price point you're at, I mean, go look at how the numbers move on a $100,000 loan at a 4% interest rate versus 6%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4% is better, but from a monthly cash flow perspective, it might not move the needle for as much as you might think.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I love that. People ask me all the time, should I wait until the market gets better or whatever worse? Like, no, don't wait, because especially when you're talking long-term. If people who are buying long-term, buy and hold stuff, it's insanity to wait, right? Because 30 years from now, 20 years from now, trust me, houses are going to be worth more than they are now. They just will be. So waiting this out and trying to time it is silly, especially when you're thinking long-term like that. Listen, we could do this all day. You're a fun guy to talk to. Clearly, we think a lot alike, which makes it awesome when someone agrees with everything I say. It just makes it so much more fun to talk to them. But no, seriously though, I could do this all day with you, but I want to respect your time. How can people get a hold of you if they want to, or anything that you're involved? Like, how should people reach out if they're like, I need more Michael in my life?
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you asking. So I'm on LinkedIn at Michael Albaum. I'm on Twitter at Michael Albaum. You can also come check me out at the Roofstock Academy, roofstockacademy.com, roofstock.com. Also, you can filter your way and find me there as well.
Awesome. I'm a big user of Roofstock. I am a consumer. I'm a client. I love the service. I think it's awesome. I've sold properties on there. I bought properties on there. So it's a great service. You guys should go check it out. Go find Michael there. Michael, thank you for your time. And I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. It's been very, very interesting. And thanks for being so transparent and sharing with everybody. I appreciate it.
Hey, likewise, Mike. This was great. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you. Okay, that was fun talking to Michael. I cannot imagine living in a van and trying to do what I do remotely like that, but I think I just need the convenience and the comfort of my own home to get things done. It's just me. But guys, if that sounds like fun to you, you should go and check him out and go to Roofstock Academy and check out what they got going on there. Lots of good resources for you. Michael was a fun interview and definitely love talking to people who have that adventurous spirit to just travel the world and figure it out and get their stuff done and build their business and their life that they want. That's the bottom line here. And what my takeaway was, he lived life on his own terms. Well, it sounds like he's dead. He is living life on his own terms, doing what makes him happy and adjusting along the way. Love it, love it, love it. Too many of us live a life we don't love, and we're doing things we don't want to be doing. And while sometimes that's necessary for a period, you always should be striving to change things and create the life that you really want. And that's what I want you to do. Go out there and create the life you really want. We'll talk to you next time.